Hi travelers! So the last 2 weekends we have been in Charleston and did some video and took some pictures. Matt's been in C school, so the girls and I took the opportunity to go with him both weekends and go around and do some of the touristy items. We visited Patriots Point, the beach, Magnolia Plantation, and lots of playgrounds that Kinley found on her phone. So we thought we would show you what we thought of all of the different stops. First up is a playground that's right next to Mount Pleasant Visitor Center, where we stopped to get some information about what we could do and what was around there. Also, good tip for travelers, they sell tickets to a lot of the places at a reduced cost of what you would pay at the place. And also, even it was cheaper than some of the little coupons that you can find in the flyers in the hotel. So good traveler tip. And so we went to this playground that was literally right behind. It's called Waterfront Park, where that visitor center was. And then after that we headed over to Patriots Point to visit the USS Laffey, which is a destroyer, and the USS Yorktown. So follow along. So I asked the girls after our Patriots Point trip what their favorite part of Patriots Point was, and they both liked the destroyer, walking through the destroyer and looking inside the little windows, seeing the radar room, seeing the bunks that the guys slept in, seeing the mail room and the commissary. You even get to walk through the engine room, and there's a couple of buttons you can push. So the girls really thought that was the most interesting of the ships. I thought the aircraft carrier was the most interesting. They actually had airplanes inside the aircraft carrier as well as up on the top deck. And then inside the aircraft carrier, they had the Apollo pod from the mission in 1968. The Apollo pod was actually recovered by the USS Yorktown, brought into the ship to retrieve the astronauts. And there's a little simulated ride, so you wait your turn and you can go inside, and it shows you all about the mission and the recovery and how it's now sitting there for you to see inside the USS Yorktown. It was really cool. We learned a lot of history, and one thing that was the most amazing to me was there was actually an escalator inside the USS Yorktown that was operating in 1954 that they used to take supplies up and down the stairs rather than climbing the supplies up and down a ladder. So that was really interesting to me. So the girls and I both learned a lot of history in that little trip. So next we went to the beach, and we'll show you that. We had some interesting experiences with finding some crabs, and I hope you enjoy. So on Saturday, we decided we were going to go to the beach at Isle of Palms. So I just put into my phone the parking for Isle of Palms, and GPS took me straight there. We were leaving pretty early, around 8:30 or 9 in the morning, so we weren't real worried about finding a parking spot. I had heard it was difficult to find parking there. They did have all-day parking where I think it was $15, but we were only staying for a few hours, so we parked in the street parking, and there's a little parking kiosk where you buy a little ticket based on the number of hours you want to stay. It prints a little ticket and you stick it in your front window. And I just set an alarm on my phone to remind myself 30 minutes before our time was up, so that I could give the kids a 10-minute warning to hop out of the water so we could rinse our feet off and walk back to our car in plenty of time to not get a parking ticket or get my car towed. So I have heard that that is pretty common, so make sure if you do use the hourly parking that you set yourself a reminder. But we went and we had a great time. The girls looked for plenty of seashells. There were a ton of oyster shells. And then we found a really cool starfish that was still alive, so we just held him, took a picture, and then put him back in the water. And then Chloe found a huge clamshell, and I got pinched by a crab. So it was a fun few hours. And then after that, we had lunch and spent the rest of the day just playing at the pool at the hotel. So then we knew we had to check out on Sunday, and so our plans for Sunday were to go to Magnolia Plantation, and we'll tell you all about that in just a little bit. So today we have ventured over to Isle of Palms to check out the beach. There's a couple of fishing boats off the shore that we can watch from here, and there is a surfer out in the water that we've watched come in a couple times. These girls, they're shell hunting. Several runners and walkers out on the beach. So when we went to Magnolia Plantation, I just put in the GPS on my phone again. We headed out. The signs were really good once we got close to the area. No troubles getting to the parking. We bought our tickets at the ticket booth there at Magnolia Plantation. I probably could have saved a couple of dollars had I bought them at the visitor center like I did the Patriot Point tickets, but no big deal. They did have a tour called the Slavery to Freedom Tour leaving within 5 minutes of when we bought our ticket, so we did decide to do that tour first. So you hop on a tram, you have a little tour guide that gives you about a 45-minute presentation, and 15 to 20 minutes of that is just free time to walk through all of the cabins that they have there remaining. There are 4 remaining cabins. At one time there were 11. And they represent different time periods. So I've put the pictures here in date order, but when you actually go there, they are not in date order. So they ranged from 1850 to 1960 as far as the updating. And it was really interesting. We learned a lot of information that I didn't know from before. And then you got to walk through the cabins, and the girls really liked seeing the cooking equipment and the beds, so the different items that were in each of the different time periods. And then after that, we headed back to, dropped you back off at the ticket booth, and we went to the petting zoo there. They have local animals, so alligators, deer, goats, there were some rabbits, but you could feed the goats, and the girls, Kinley was most interested in the alligators, and there were ducks. There was all kinds of different animals to see. Not so many to pet. You could pet the deer, you could pet the goats. Don't pet the peacocks or they will apparently attack you. But they were really pretty. And then after that, we headed off on the garden tour. We did get a little lost trying to find the children's garden, which is where the fairy garden is as well. We did find it. The kids were complaining on the way back because it was hot. It was a long walk out to the children's garden, but it was very nice. We did see a real alligator or 3 along the way. And there were some other interesting ships and things that they used on the river that you could see along the pathways as well. So we did not go to all the gardens, but we did walk through several, and specifically the children's garden and the fairy gardens. And then we made our way back to stop and cool off in the gift shop and grab some lemonade and a snack for the girls before we headed back to our car and headed on our way. So for our second weekend in Charleston, it was much more low-key. It was the weekend of the Friday the 13th. So for Friday the 13th, we did schedule a haunted carriage tour. During the day, the girls and I just did some picking up of snacks for our weekend, some errands, and then hung out at the hotel and swam and took a nap because we knew it was going to be a late night after having a very early morning of travel. On Saturday, we spent most of the day at the beach. The girls and I went very similar to the previous Saturday, where we went early in the morning. We did the pay to park for hourly using the kiosk, and then in the afternoon we kind of relaxed and played at the pool. And we went back that night. So once Matt was out of class, he got to go with us. And so we all walked on the beach. We had dinner at one of the restaurants on the beach. And then we all went and tried some ice cream. And before going to bed that night. Sunday, again, was low key. The girls and I, once we checked out, headed downtown. We walked the markets downtown. And then we picked Matt up before we headed back home for the rest of the week. Girls have found the baby pool of the beach. The tide's coming in, and this was like a low area up on the beach. So the waves are way out there, and there's this really cool baby pool-ish thing with all the parents and the babies along the edge. So in review of our weekend in Charleston, our low-key weekend in Charleston, the Friday night haunted carriage tour was okay. Chloe liked the stories. Kinley was scared to death of the Hat Man story. We had to explain a little bit before bedtime. Matt was not so thrilled with it, and I thought it was just okay. It was a nice intro to some of the history of the area and some of the buildings. But in general, I'm not sure I would recommend the haunted carriage tour for kids younger than 10. And then other than that, you know, most of the weekend was at the pool, at the beach. We had another experience with the crab, which you saw. And actually a third experience with the crab. Chloe's finger got pinched just when she was out in the water. She thought she was grabbing a shell that was hitting her foot, and it was a crab. All is well, no big deal. And then on Sunday, the girls and I headed downtown. We walked the markets. It was nice. We all wore masks to stay safe because it is COVID and the Delta variant is rampant. And then we just headed back. So again, low-key weekend, and I hope it helped you see some of the fun things that you can do in Charleston, and we'll see you next time. Happy sailing.